Hi there. I'm Robert, a dad of 2 kids who absolutely adore Halloween. It's our favorite time of the year, full of costumes, decorations, and of course the candy. But as fun as it is, there's always that little voice in the back of my mind reminding me to keep them safe. That's what inspired me to share some tips today to help make sure everyone's Halloween is not only a blast, but also safe. Let's start with one of the most important things, knowing where you're going. Last year, my kids, Sarah and Ben, couldn't wait to visit every single house in the neighborhood. And I admit, I got caught up in the excitement too. But as the night went on, I realized I hadn't really planned out our route, and we ended up on streets I didn't know well. I'm usually pretty laid back, but I'll tell you, walking in unfamiliar areas when it's dark with kids can be a little nerve-wracking. So before we head out, we now map out a route. I make sure we're sticking to areas that are well lit, and if we're heading somewhere new, I'll ask around to see if it's safe. This not only gives me peace of mind, but helps us stay on track without getting lost in the excitement. Another thing we do is trick or treat in groups. One Halloween, Ben's friend wandered off, and let me tell you, those 10 minutes felt like forever. From that year on, we've always made sure to stick together. Younger kids should always have an adult with them, but even older ones need to have a group. It's safer, and besides, the fun is in being with your friends, right? Before they leave, I make sure they've got their phones fully charged and that they check in every so often. And if you're the one chaperoning, keeping a head count can be a lifesaver. We've also been lucky to have great neighbors. One year, when Sarah was dressed up as a fairy princess, we met up with some neighbors who had planned their trick-or-treat route too, and it made the night feel much safer. It's always a good idea to chat with your neighbors beforehand. You can figure out who's handing out candy and who's not, and avoid knocking on doors of folks who might not be celebrating. But even when you know the area, you still want to remind your kids of basic safety rules. I've always told Sarah and Ben to never go into someone's house, no matter how friendly they seem. Halloween is all about collecting candy outside, so they know not to cross that line. If something feels off, they have permission to skip that house. Let's talk about costumes. Sarah's all about bright colors and sparkles, while Ben loves his dark, mysterious outfits. Last year, he was a ninja, which was awesome, but the all-black costume made him nearly invisible at night. That's when I introduced reflective tape. He wasn't thrilled at first, but once I added it to his costume in a way that didn't spoil the look, he was happy. I'd suggest adding reflective tape to any dark costumes or giving the kids glow sticks or little LED lights to carry. It's a small adjustment that makes a big difference. Another lesson we learned the hard way: fit matters. One year, Sarah's princess dress was so long, she kept tripping. We had to stop every few minutes to adjust it, and it slowed us down. Now, before Halloween, we do a costume test, where we make sure everything fits right and is comfortable. If something's too long or loose, we make adjustments, whether it's hemming a cape or pinning a sleeve. That way, they can run around without worrying about falling over their costumes. Also, make sure the materials are flame-resistant. I'll never forget the year Ben brushed up against a jack-o'-lantern, and I panicked for a second. Thankfully, his costume was made of safe material, but ever since, I've double-checked that any costume we get is labeled as flame-resistant. When it comes to walking around, I remind the kids to stick to the sidewalks. It might seem obvious, but when you're running from house to house, the excitement can make them forget basic rules. We've all seen kids darting across streets without looking, and it always makes my heart skip a beat. Before we head out, I go over the basics. Only cross at crosswalks or well-lit intersections, and always look both ways. I've also taught them to stay on the left side of the road, facing traffic, if there's no sidewalk. Leading by example is key. If they see me walking safely, they'll follow suit. One thing I'm strict about is no distracted walking. I know how tempting it is for them to check their phones, but I always remind Sarah and Ben to focus on their surroundings. Phones are great for emergencies, but Halloween is a night to be fully present, not looking down at screens while crossing streets. Once we get home, it's all about the candy. But before anyone digs in, we have a little tradition where we inspect everything together. We look for any torn wrappers, things that seem off, or homemade treats from strangers. Anything that raises a red flag gets tossed. It's also a good way to bond and share stories from the night. Now, if your kids have food allergies, like Ben does with peanuts, this part is especially important. He knows to set aside any candies he's unsure of, and I double-check them for ingredients. If there are too many treats he can't have, we have a little trade-off system. I swap those candies out for safe alternatives I keep handy. Once we've sorted through everything, we set some limits on how much they can eat right away. I let them pick a few pieces for the night, but we save the rest for later. It helps keep the sugar intake reasonable and avoids any late-night stomach aches. Finally, let's not forget the importance of manners on Halloween. I've taught Sarah and Ben to always say thank you, whether they're getting candy from a neighbor or at a big event. It's such a simple thing, but it goes a long way in keeping the spirit of the holiday fun and respectful. And for those of us handing out candy, it's just nice to hear. So those are my tried and true tips for making Halloween both fun and safe. Being a dad, I've learned that it's all about preparation and communication. By setting a few ground rules and planning ahead, you can let your kids enjoy the magic of Halloween without any worry. I hope you and your family have a spooky, sweet, and safe Halloween night. Happy trick-or-treating!